This is Big Skinny. Thank you so much for joining us today on If Not For Music. Today we're going to sit down and talk with one busy man, Mr. Jim Peterik. Now, you might ask, who is Jim Peterik? Well, he's an American musician, singer, and songwriter. He's best known as the founding member of the group Ides Of March with their hit Vehicle. And also, he is a former founding member of the band Survivor. He's also co-written many songs for groups such as 38 Special, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Blackhawk, Keep Trick, Sammy Hagar, Cathy Richardson, Van Zant, Brian Wilson, REO Speedwagon, and the Beach Boys. He's currently running the melodic rock band Pride of Lions and a smooth jazz project, Jim Peterik's Lifeforce. And he has a regular series of yearly concert performances with an all-star cast as world stage. So, as you can see, he's a very busy man. We're just glad he's taking a little time out to talk with us today, and we're going to be bringing him your way next on If Not For Music. And I'm Big Skinny, your host, and it'll all be coming your way next on If Not For Music. Stick around.
Hey, this is Jim Peterik for Kenny.
Hey, how you doing, Jim? This is Kenny. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing great, man. Enjoying a nice, beautiful day here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, I love Dallas, man. Awesome.
When are you going to be coming back through here again?
I hope soon. I hope I'm anywhere soon.
Are you getting tired of sitting around the house?
Well, when I sit around the house, I really sit. No, I got a studio in my house. I haven't been lax at all. I've been working on an album, mixing an album by a group I'm a part of called Pride of Lions, and then we just put out a new song called Spirit of Chicago with the Ides of March, and it's always something to do. I did some what do they call it, live stream concerts, and trying to stay busy, and stay positive.
Yeah, I tell you what. Speaking of that video you guys put out, the Spirit of Chicago, that was a really cool video you guys did. A lot of artists were involved in that. That is pretty cool. We hear a lot about Chicago, especially around here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We hear a lot about Chicago, but what does the Spirit of Chicago mean to you?
Well, that lyric video really kind of sums it up. I've always thought of Chicago as a family kind of town. I grew up in Berlin, Illinois, a little bungalow town where everybody knew each other, and I knew every house on the block. And to me, that's Chicago. It's neighborhoods. It's not like, no offense to L.A., but L.A., there's no center. Chicago has a center. We've got the lakefront. We've got all these wonderful suburbs. People are friendly for the most part. And that's what Chicago means. In this video we did, we show the first responders, the police who are really up to their necks in trouble, in this town. There are parts of the town that is always something going on and not the good stuff. And the fire department is, always kicks ass. So we just try to show the sense of community, and the musical community's always been very tight in Chicago ever since the 60s when the Ides of March were starting out, and we were, playing the same teen clubs as the Buckinghams and the Crying Shames and the New Colony Six and Shadows of Night. It was a very tight-knit group of guys, and it's still that way in Chicago. And that's why I brought aboard, Dennis DeYoung for this, and Cathy Richardson, and so many other Chicago artists.
Speaking of those DooWop groups from back in the 60s, I mean, there was a bunch of groups back from the 60s. You guys have gotten to actually work with them same bands that you started out playing in the same venues as them. You've done some concerts and some projects with those artists as well, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. I remember playing with the Shy Lights on a bill. It didn't matter if you were black and white back then. It was all one thing. Good music. That's it,
Yeah, that's what it's all about. You started out at such a young age. You were like 14 when you guys were 14 when you were in the Ides of March. Is that right? About 14 or so?
Well, yeah, and still am. But yeah, 1964 is when we started. And now 55 years later, the original four guys, myself, Bob Berglund, Larry Millis, and Mike Borch, we're still thick as thieves, still playing until this COVID disaster. We were doing our 40 shows a year and, just loving every minute of it.
So I want to say thank you to Scott May for getting all this set up for me. Tell him I appreciate it. If he gets a chance to listen in, but I really appreciate him setting this up. He's also one of your members of Ides of March, and man, you guys got some great albums out. Me and my wife are sitting around listening to one of them this morning. I tell you what, guys, impressive music.
Well, thanks, Kenny. Why did they call you Big Skinny, by the way?
Well, that was my radio name when I was in radio. I had a buddy of mine that we were trying to come up with a little moniker for me, because you have to have a cool radio name. And
sure.
You familiar with Big and Rich out of Nashville?
Of course.
Okay, so anyway, we were going to go Big Kenny, but that name was already taken by the guy there in Big and Rich. So my buddy said, why don't you just call yourself Big Skinny? And I'm a 6'4" dude. I was, 300 pounds. So it just kind of stuck, it was like an oxymoron.
I love it. It's very, very catchy.
Well, it's unique. It
is, I've got the purple hair. You've got the big skinny. So,
I love the purple hair, man. You get that makes for a good photo.
I don't just blend in. That's the point.
So whose idea was the purple hair?
That was mine. I went to my hair guy and I said, I want to do something crazy. That was about 8 years ago. And we looked through all the colors and, hey, purple's kind of cool, and that was it. And I could be singing for the Sox with the Ides of March, and I'll be going through the stands and they'll go, there's the guy with the purple hair. It's just one of those hooks that, and now I can't get rid of it, of course, but underneath the purple, it's like, I look like Dennis DeYoung, I would be white and gray, so I'm sticking with it.
We're all getting there. As a side note, I can't wear purple. Every time I put on a purple shirt or wear anything purple, I got kids running up to me calling me Barney. So I have to stay away from purple.
Well, you're not the only one. I was walking through the Forest Preserve the other day. My wife and I like to walk this one path, and this family passes by, and the little 4-year-old sister's mommy, is that man a clown?
So speaking of
and I go,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, brother.
No. I said, yeah, I am. Anyway.
So anyway, speaking of your wife, we're all spending a little extra time at home with our significant others these days with all this that's going on. But that song Vehicle from the Ides of March, you wrote about your wife, which you are still with today.
I wrote it for her to try to win her back. And I met her at a Turtles concert. And we went I showed up at our Riverside Brookfield High School, was too nervous to ask anybody to the concert, so I went alone. And in line, there was this gorgeous girl with a couple of girlfriends, 3 girlfriends. And I said to myself, this girl will never talk to me. And she had orange culottes on, knee socks, what do you call them? Saddle shoes. And her hair was gorgeous, kind of honey blonde. I can still see her. And suddenly she turns to me and says, aren't you Peterik? And I go, last time I looked, yeah. And she said, man, I just saw Ides of March play, and he opened up for the New County Six. You guys were great. And I said, there is a God. And we sat together, and we just, fell in love, basically. But about a year later, she dumped me. It was really, she said, Jim, I love you, but not in that way, and I want to date other guys, and I was just in a funk, So suddenly she starts calling me again, because I had a cool car. I had a 64 Plymouth Valiant, and so she starts calling me, and she goes, Jim, you got that cool car. Can you give me a ride to modeling school? But it's not a date, She was 15 years old, and she was doing modeling, and I was 17. And I said, sure. And I'm figuring, if I'm sitting next to her, maybe, I'll get a kiss or something. Nothing. Take her home. Thanks, Jim. Shakes my hand. That happened about 5 times. And pretty soon I said, man, all I am is your vehicle, baby. And I had this idea. That's a great word. That's such a unique word. This horn riff just came out of my head. Oh man, that's hot. And I showed the guys the song. Went to the recording studio, man. We caught lightning in a bottle. 2 takes. We had the song. It goes to #1 on the charts. This is the spring of 1970. Suddenly, I'm on the road with the Ides, and we're opening up for Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin, Grateful Dead, Poco, Allman Brothers, living the dream at 19. Guess who starts calling me when I got home? Yeah, Little Miss Kulops. And she said, Jim, that's a pretty nice song you got there. You know, maybe I was a little too hasty. You know, maybe we should start dating again, you know? And I let her, Kenny, I let her hang on that phone for a good 3 seconds. And I said, sounds good to me. And we started dating again, and soon we were engaged. Soon we were making wedding plans. And I'll tell you what, 47 years later, I'm still her vehicle.
Yeah. Now you're walking around the mall with her, man.
That's right. We're mall walking.
That's greatness, man. So, you know, talking about your younger years, so you're 14 years old or so when you're getting started in the music industry. And like I said, that's pretty serious music industry or, you know, career. This is not just, you know, just a hobby. This is like you're really, I mean, starting to do things. How was it like for you as a young man when, you know, all your other friends were, you know, into different things, and here you are trying to get this music career started?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I mean, we have humble roots, and we never took it, never got the ego, you know, and we kept the same friends. And, you know, some guys were auto mechanics and some guys were, you know, this and that. We played music, and it wasn't really, there wasn't any delineation. In fact, before we had a hit record, we were all in the marching band, the high school marching band, and we would play at the halftime for football games. And we were looked down upon. You know, I mean, the jocks were like, they were too good for us, and the cheerleaders, they didn't want to know. You know, finally we had a hit record, and suddenly everybody loved us. You know, nothing succeeds like success. You know.
So how much did it change for you guys once you had a hit record on the radio?
Oh man, it all changed, you know, but I got to say, we never changed. I remember we opened for Led Zeppelin in Winnipeg, 1970. Vehicle was number one. We had the night of our lives, man. We got a standing ovation from 20,000 people every song in the Winnipeg arena. Led Zeppelin came on. They were pissed. The PA sucked. They were used to better things. They had a bad dressing room, if any dressing room. They put on not a good show. I was watching them going, oh, man, they're really dogging it, you know. Well, anyway, the next day the headlines come out in the entertainment section. It says, Ides of March steal the show from Led Zeppelin. And you know what? We weren't impressed with ourselves. We're going, well, we did a pretty good job there, you know. And we never got the big head. And I think that's why we're still around and still loving what we're doing.
Yeah. What was it like playing with Jimi Hendrix or opening it for Jimi Hendrix?
That was crazy. I mean, to be honest, it was about 6 months before he passed away. This is, I guess, 72. And he wasn't in his prime. And I tried to talk to him in the dressing room, which was a locker room. And he was like pretty out of it. But he got up there, and he's still Hendrix, man. It was still a thrill to sit on the side of the stage and watch him.
So as you were growing up, you were getting into music. Who was the influence on your musical style? Who was your musical influences?
Well, you have to realize we were so young that we had so many different influences through the years. We didn't know who the hell we were. You know, at first, of course, the Beatles really kicked it all off. Our first rehearsal, we were watching Ed Sullivan on February 9th, I guess, and saw their debut. And we were going, okay, now we got a roadmap. Now we know what we want to be. They look good. They're writing their own songs. The girls are going ape shit. Yeah, I think we got it. So we started writing in that direction. And the first song we put out on the Parrot label was called You Wouldn't Listen. It went to 42 nationally. We're on Dick Clark and Mama Cass. It went to number 7 in Chicago. But if you listen to it, it's like the Kinks meet the Zombies or something. You know, that's what we wanted to be. But then, you know, the horns came in, and, you know, like, we love the Stax Volt stuff, like the, you know, Hold On, I'm Coming by Sam and Dave and Soul Man, all that stuff. And James Brown, I Feel Good. We added one trumpet, then we added another trumpet, then a saxophone. And then Blood, Sweat, and Tears comes along, and we were so influenced by BS&T. So much so that a lot of people thought Vehicle was by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Much to our chagrin, right?
Yeah, it did have sort of a similar sound, but it was very different, very unique.
Well, it was kind of the rock and roll side of we're like a rock and roll band with horns. They were like a jazz band with horns. You know, that was the difference.
Well, that's what made you guys unique. That's what made you guys unique. Was that sound.
We didn't know a major seventh chord if it landed on us. You know, so yeah, we had a lot of influences through the years. In fact, after Vehicle, we had a hit with a thing called "L.A. Goodbye," which, if you listen to, is very Crosby, Stills and Nash influence. We loved them too, so you couldn't really pin us down.
Well, that's not a bad thing. I mean, because, you know, music is always evolving. You can listen to someone's first album and then listen to their third album, and, you know, they might have just found their groove in their third album of what their sound is going to be like, you know. So it's
very true.
It's alive. Music is alive. It's always evolving. People are changing music all the time. No
doubt. But now, you know, at age 69, our last album came out in August of last year, 2019. It's called Play On. And we're very conscious of trying to stay into one groove for once in our career, you know. And if you listen to that album, it's very cohesive. It's got the melodies, the big choruses, it's got the horns. And I don't know if you've heard it, but I'm really proud of that record.
Yeah, actually, that's the one we were listening to this morning. We started off with Swagger, which was a really cool tune.
Thanks.
That was a really, really, really great album. Me and my wife were listening to that this morning. Really good. Solid album.
Well, thanks so much. It means a lot, hearing that. We were lucky to bring in Mark Farner, which you mentioned, Swagger. We wrote that together, sang it live in the studio. We pretty much captured that the way we did back in the Vehicle days, where everybody was set up in one recording space, and we're all playing together, as opposed to, you know, shipping files across the internet. You know, that wasn't what we were doing. We were making a record like the old school ways. And we also brought in David Pack of Ambrosia for a song about Mary, and Cathy Richardson with Blue Storm Rising, and Paul Schaefer, our producer, went to LA and captured his Wurlitzer parts on Rule of Three. And man, we just had a blast. Mindy Aber, the phenomenal sax player, it's called Friends Like You, which it went to #1 in Canada, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was listening this morning because I'm a huge jazz fan, smooth jazz. I love it. So your Lifeforce albums were I really dig. And Cathy Richardson, she did a song on there, Morning Song. Is that right? I might be.
Actually, Morning Song was Lisa McLaury.
Oh, McLaury. Okay, I thought I might be combining those, but I was listening to that this morning as well. Man, I love smooth jazz, and to me that's a good way to get a day started right there. My wife, not such a big fan, but I love it, man.
Well, that's a great genre. You know, I did the second album with Lisa. It's called Lisa McLaury Sings Acoustic Alchemy. Acoustic Alchemy is my wife and my favorite. Smooth. They're not really smooth jazz. They're more like, I don't know what you'd call them. But they're amazing. Are you familiar with Acoustic Alchemy?
Yes, sir.
Oh, are they good or what?
They're awesome. You know, are you a big Spiral Gyra fan?
Of course.
Yes, man. See, I love that whole genre. I can just just put that on and slip away.
I know. I love Fatburger and David Grusin and David Benoit. And you know, when I get home from the road, I don't want to listen to REO Speedwagon. No offense, Kevin, but I want to chill out. You know, and that's the way to do it. But anyway, so I put on an album called Lisa McLaury Sings Acoustic Alchemy, and we played with them a number of times, Lisa and I got their permission. The guys love me. I love them. And I got their permission to lyricize some of their greatest songs. And they had to approve every one, in which they did, you know. And, man, I'll tell you, look that album up. I think it's on, you know, Amazon or whatever. But I'm really proud of that record because it combines their sound with my lyrics and Lisa's amazing voice.
Well, I have to check that one out, sir.
Cool.
So tell me how you got involved with I mean, well, first off, let me ask you this. You know, you find yourself in 1973, you find yourself on your own as a solo act. And by the way, I have that record in my collection.
Oh my God.
You find and I tell you, it was weird how I found it. You know, I knew your name from another group that you were involved with at the time. So I found this album, this solo album of yours, and I'm like, I didn't even know he had a solo album, and I found it at a secondhand store.
Sure.
That was one.
It probably said demonstration, not for sale on it too. Right?
Yeah, I think it did. As a matter of fact. Yeah, I think it does have demo on it.
Yeah, I think we gave away more records than we sold, but Don't Fight the Feeling was I'm proud of the record. I play it. I still play it. I got it out the other day and said, "This doesn't suck," you know.
No, I thought it was a great record. I mean, like I said, one of the things I did was when I was a kid, my mom, she liked, for some reason, like going to those thrift stores, and the first thing I do is I'd hit the record bin, and I found that in there. But yeah, I still got that album in my collection today. But you find yourself on your own in 1973. How different was that for you as a solo artist after working with a group like the Ides?
Oh man, night and day. I mean, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. I mean, the Ides of March were a popular group, you know, and we would, you know, fill, you know, we played the college circuit and, you know, great crowds and enthusiastic crowds. Very rarely played clubs. We were always a concert band. And suddenly I'm on my own with not the name, just my own name. And I'm playing dives, not dives, but small clubs with small audiences. And man, I'll tell you, it was a hard lesson. And finally, when the album came out in '76, finally I started getting some good shows, opening up for Boston and opening up for Heart. But leading up to that, I was playing like, you know, the Swingers Lounge in Miami Beach, and these Myrtle Beach, this terrible beach club in Myrtle Beach all week, you know. And I was used to playing concerts, and here I was relegated to just a whole different scene. But I never got depressed. I always kept playing originals. Never became a cover group at all. But I'll tell you, that's, you know, pretty soon I was getting tired of that, and that's when I put together Survivor in late '77. And I wanted another chance at the brass ring, you know.
You guys y'all put out a lot of great music. And how did y'all get involved with Rocky, the Rocky soundtracks?
Oh, it's an interesting story. We put out, in the first album, which has that picture of Kim Basinger on the cover and us on the back in front of a smoking airplane, and that, you know, got some attention. Somewhere in America got some spins, and then we put out Premonition, which is a really good album, but again, some spins on Poor Man's Son and Summer Nights. And then we're going, well, what do we do now? And just about then I get an answering machine call, and I hit play, and I hear, "Hey, yo, Jim, give me a call. It's Sylvester Stallone. It's a nice answering machine you got there." And I go, "Yeah, right. Whatever. Somebody's putting me on, you know." And my wife heard it, and she said, "Man, you better call that guy back." I said, "Oh, that's some joker." No, call him back. So I called the number, and very tentatively I says, "This is Jim Peterik. Is this really Sylvester Stallone?" You know, "Hey, Jimbo, call me Sly." And I go, "Shit, no kidding?" "Yeah." I said, "You're my hero, man, you know." He says, "Well, I'll tell you what, Tony Scotti, record company president, is a friend of mine. He just played me your second album, and that's the sound I want for my new movie, Rocky 3. And I don't want to use a Gonna Fly Now song. You know, that's a nice song, but I want something for the kids, something with a pulse. Can you help me out?" I said, "Hell yeah." And he sent us the first 3 minutes of the movie. He had us go out and find a Betamax Pro machine, sends us this big ass cassette, huge thing, set it up on the kitchen table. I called Frankie Sullivan, the guitar player, up, and we watched that 3 minutes. And, you know, you see Mr. T rising up, and you see Stallone kind of getting soft doing MasterCard commercials. And I just had my guitar around my neck, and I just started that pattern of digga, 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 you know. And I was watching the punches being thrown. I was trying to coordinate the chords with the punches. And went bump, 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 bump. You know, and like, yeah, now that we got something there. But we only had 3 minutes of the movie, so I called Sly back. I said, "Sly, you got to send us the whole movie." He said, "Oh, I can't do it. The movie company won't let me." I said, look, if you want your song, if you want your chart-busting song, your anthem, you got to send us the whole movie. Finally sent us 2 days later, got the movie. We watched that movie, and that's when we heard that phrase, Rocky, you're losing the eye of the tiger. Oh, shit, there's the title, man. And once we had that title and once we had that storyline, the song wrote itself. Rising up back on the street, did my time, took my chances, went the distance. Now I'm back on my feet, just a man in his will to survive. So many times it happens too fast. You trade your passion for glory. Don't lose your grip on the dreams of the past. You must fight just to keep them alive. It's the eye of the tiger. It's a thrill of the fight. And I'm jogging around my neighborhood in LaGrange. I got my tape recorder and I'm spitting out all these lyrics. And I got home, man. And man, we had a song, and we recorded it, a demo, sent it to Stallone. He flipped out, and he said, "You guys wrote a song that's going to outlive you and me." And I'm going, "Yeah, whatever, sure." Well, I think he's right. And we're very, very blessed to be a part of that song. Then he called us for Rocky IV, and we wrote "Burning Heart." So it was just a great union.
Great relationship there.
Totally. And we're still buddies.
That's awesome, dude. How did you get involved with writing for other artists? I mean, I saw you've worked with 38 Special and Lynyrd Skynyrd. You've worked with Blackhawk. I mean, you've worked with so many different groups. How did you get involved in the co-writing or the writing?
Well, Survivor, was taking off. And, we're doing pretty well. We hadn't had the big hit yet. But I had a mentor that signed us to our record deal. His name was John Kalodner. And he was a big fan of mine as a songwriter. He loved Vehicle. He went way back with me and what I did. So he was totally aware of what I could do. And he started pairing me up with different artists. And he was good friends with Mark Spector, 38 Special's manager. And their first hit was called Rockin' Into the Night, which actually was supposed to be on the first Survivor album. But our producer, Ron Nevison, didn't feel it was right for the band. He thought it was just too Southern or something. And we were kind of devastated that he wouldn't let us put it on the album. But somehow John Kalodner got a hold of the cassette of the demo and played it for Mark Spector. Mark Spector flipped out, and 38 put it out and became their first hit. Well, after that, Kalodner says, "Man, you guys got to get together for real and start writing songs together." So Don Barnes and Jeff Carlisi came out and, sat at that same kitchen table where we wrote Eye of the Tiger. A pretty lucky table. Don Barnes is on one side of me and I can still see it. Carlisi's on the other side. And we sat there, making small talk, eating the nachos my wife made, having some fun. But, where do you start? It was like a blind date. Suddenly, Don Barnes says, "Well, I got a title." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "Hold On Loosely." And I said, "Hell yeah, but don't let go." And Jeff goes, "Well, I got a little riff. I don't know if you like it." And he goes, "Dad, oh, bam, bam." I said, "Hell, I love it. Are you kidding me?" And the sparks started flying. And, that's the signpost of a great chemistry is when things just start flying. And an hour and a half, we had Hold On Loosely. But don't let go. If you cling too tightly, you're going to lose control. Your baby needs something to believe in and a whole lot of space to breathe in. And believe me, I lived that story. When you're dating a girl and you're 18, man, you got to give them some space or they'll leave you. That's what happened. That's what happened to me. So that, I lived that lyric, man. And then we just had a run of songs. We wrote Caught Up in You next, then Fantasy Girl, Wild Eyed Southern Boys, Chain Lightning, You Keep Running Away. It was just magic, and I still love those guys.
Yeah, one of my favorite albums of theirs was Bone Against Steel, which you did some writing on as well. I love that album. I know it was one without Don Barnes, but it was a great album.
Which album? I'm sorry.
Bone Against Steel.
Oh yeah, that was Max Carl. But yeah, Sound of Your Voice is a hell of a song, man. I'm real proud of that one.
Yeah, that was a great album. That was one of my favorite albums of theirs, and I did like that album with. I did like the Hold On Loosely and those songs, man. They were one of my favorite bands growing up as well, man. I love 38 Special.
Yeah, me too. And they're still out there kicking ass.
Yes, sir. Now, with all that you have going on, because you seem like a pretty busy guy, if you look at your information, you've got so much going on throughout the year. How do you find time to sit down and write new music?
Well, that's, Kenny, I'm doing it when I'm doing everything else. I'm watching dishes, and my mind, you don't shut off that songwriting thing, and suddenly there's a melody that comes in my head. I'll drive the last dish, and I'll go to the piano and put it down. I'm always writing, no matter what I'm doing. I write songs in my dreams. I get up, and grab my, iPhone and put the idea down the next morning. I see if it's worth anything. But, my wife can't believe it, because really that's what I do. That's my hobby, my passion, and I'm doing it pretty much 24/7. And sometimes it's just a little piece of a song, but I'll tape it, and then I'll go back to it sometimes years later. And I do that all the time, where it's almost like co-writing with yourself, where maybe you weren't able to do it then, but maybe you've lived a little bit longer and gained a little more wisdom, and you're able to finish it now. And it's a really interesting process.
So do you find out the most successful songs are the ones that take the least amount of time to write, or are they the ones that take years to write? It's no one thing. Some great songs have come so quick. The search is over. I wrote it in the car, the whole melody, some of the words. I showed it to Frankie. We finished it off in one day. But there's other songs that are like long distance runners. And I'm trying to think of a good example, but like I said, it would take 20 years to write, just because you put it aside, you bring it back. There's something there, but you can't quite put your finger on it. But overall, I would say the best songs come pretty quickly. So the writing process and producing process and recording process, that's all become a little easier with the technology we have nowadays.
Well, yeah, I can go back on my iPhone like 10, 15 years and find ideas. It's so convenient to access what you have. That's the big thing. And of course, you can send files across the world. If you want a certain singer or bass player or whatever, you can do it.
And the recording process is a whole lot easier to cut into something that you want to change, rather than have to cut some tape and splice it all back together.
We were just talking about that today. It's so funny. We were just doing an edit, and I said, man, in '82, there were pieces of 2-inch tape all over the floor. And I remember it so many times. One time, Ron Nevison did an edit, and he put the piece in upside down or backwards. And he says, listen to this. And he thought he was right. It gets to that part, and he goes, yes, yep, everybody's laughing, man.
And on that Ides of March, one of the interesting facts I did find out was part of a guitar solo or something was missing. You had to actually go back and do it from a deleted cut.
Almost right. Vehicle, we did it in 2 takes. The first take was okay, pretty good. No click tracks in those days, no metronome. Second take, man, we said we nailed this thing, and we were walking around the studio. Suddenly, the co-engineer, the assistant engineer, comes out, white-faced, and I just erased 13 seconds of your master tape. And we go, holy shit! And we were just despondent. And we went outside, got a sandwich, came back, and the engineer had a big smile on his face. He cut in 13 seconds from take 1. And fortunately, it was the edit stopped right before my guitar solo, which I never played a solo so good in my life. That was a live solo with the band, with the take. I didn't even know what I was playing, but I knew one thing. I didn't play that good. Heaven was driving me or something, man. So thank God that solo was saved for posterity. And I had to go back and learn the solo. That's how good it was. And Jeff Beck said that's one of his favorite solos. And that just made my life, because he's my hero, So, and then I just had to go back and sing those 13 seconds. It's right at the end of the second chorus. I had to sing, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. I'm your vehicle woman. I think I came in. I love you. I need you. I want you. Got to have your child. Great God in heaven, I love you. and then the solo hits, and man, thank God.
Yep. So it was smiling on you for sure.
Yep.
Tell me. I tell you, one of the things that impresses me the most about you is your charity work. You guys are involved in so much charity work. It's very honorable and very, commendable. Tell us a little bit about your charity work.
mean, that's really, such an important part of what we do, what I do. We've been doing it for years. San Miguel School for the Underprivileged. I've been part of those concerts for about 15 years. We've raised so many funds to keep that school alive that it's created some amazing students from kids from the ghetto. It's a wonderful. And you hear the stories and you meet the kids after they become lawyers and doctors and successful people, and you're just so glad you did it. I do the soup kitchens every year at Christmas. And last week, the soup kitchen people called me and said, would you come and play in the parking lot? The residents of the soup kitchen have been in quarantine for 29 days. We're finally letting them out. And would you play in the parking lot? I said, hell yeah. And everybody stood, 6 feet apart, no microphone, no PA system. I brought my guitar. Those people were the best audience I ever had in my life because they were like the newly freed, and I had them singing along with Eye of the Tiger and Vehicle. Man, that was the most rewarding thing that I've done in a long time. They were so thankful. That's what it's all about.
Yes, sir. And you've also want to touch on your book. You've got a book that you just wrote, your memoir. You want to tell people where they can find that?
Well, it's on Amazon. That's probably the best place. It's in many bookstores, but you're always safe with Amazon. It's called Through the Eye of the Tiger, and it's my true story. This came out in 2014, but it's done very well, and it's cathartic to really go through your life and look at it. And some parts were very difficult to write because, like everybody else, you have struggles and tragedies in your life, and you have to relive it all. But it was worth it. I also wanted to say, in terms of the charities, we have a really good scholarship fund called A Vehicle for Education at our high school, Morton West in Berwyn, Illinois. And every year we award a student who excels in either music or the arts with a nice check. And every year the check gets a little bit richer. And we can't have an auditorium kind of a get together this year, but we're going to do it piece of, Skype or whatever. But that's been a really rewarding thing. Also, Music Cares. We've been donating money for Music Cares. I did a live stream 3 weeks ago, and my son Colin was the co-host. And it was just it's really weird as, playing to an empty theater, an empty arena. But I premiered my song Empty Arena, and I took calls and requests and donations for Music Cares, which is a great organization sponsored by the Grammy Foundation for out-of-work musicians. And God knows there's a lot of people right now that have been counting on those gigs. The Ides of March had, 15 gigs postponed to the winter or the fall. But I mean, we're set. There's so many artists that are not. They live from check to check, and from gig to gig. So we're raising a lot of money for them.
That's a very noble cause right there, I would say.
Yes, it is.
With the way things are going now, nobody knows when we're going to actually get back to arenas and to concerts and this kind of thing. So yeah, that's very cool.
Did you get a chance to? Did Scott send you Empty Arena yet, by any chance?
Yeah, I listened to that, man. That was a great song. I was just fixing to ask you about that.
Yeah, that talk about a quick song. I just saw the Black Crows. By the way, I have about 5 minutes, and I've got people in the studio that are I got to get to. But I just wanted to say that I was watching the Black Crows play for an empty theater about, a month ago. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And how do they get their juices up for nobody? And I found out later. It's very tough. But it brought me to the piano, and I just started plinking around, pretending I was Elton John. And I wrote a couple of lines that intrigued me. I said, what if the band What if the team scores a touchdown and nobody cheered? What if the band played their big encore with no one to hear? What if the children learned all their lines, ready to play, and their parents weren't there? I mean, it was. And then I said, "What? This is the sound of one hand clapping in the empty arena." I wrote that song in like 2 hours, and this was before the big quarantine. And I called Eddie Breckenfeld on drums and Clem Hayes on bass, and I played all the other instruments. And my son Colin recorded it with Larry, and suddenly, we had it out, and on YouTube, but also on iTunes and Spotify and all that. And we're donating money to the Music Cares Foundation for all the royalties.
It's a great song. All right, well, I know you got to go, but let me ask you one question I got to ask before we end up, because this is what the show's called, If Not for Music. So if it wasn't for music, Jim, what career path might you have chosen, instead of music?
Oh, by the way, I love that title. When I saw that, I said, "What a great title!" It sounds like I could write a song called "If Not for the Music." But anyway, you know what? I've thought about that, Kenny, and I have no idea what I would be doing. I mean, it would probably be something in music. Like I love guitars. I'm a guitar collector, and I wouldn't mind having a guitar shop that specialized in vintage instruments. But that's still music. You mean out of the music business, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there was no such thing as music, or if you had never got involved with music, where do you think your life would have ended up?
I think it probably would have been a counselor of some kind. I actually went to college to get a degree in psychology. I never really quite graduated, but I took a lot of psych classes, and I really intrigued by that. And I would love to be a counselor, not necessarily a shrink, but a mentor and a counselor that, someone could tell me their problems. I could try to unscramble them and make them feel better. I think that would be very rewarding.
That sounds like a pretty good plan, right? That sounds like a, pretty good career path.
That wouldn't be bad.
Well, listen, brother, I appreciate you dropping in. Thank you so much for being such a gracious interviewee. I appreciate your time, man. And I really love your music. Been a big fan of yours for a long time. I pray that you continue to put out great music, and you guys stay safe and healthy.
You too, Kenny, man. You are great. You're so knowledgeable. I can tell you're a total music fanatic, and I love that. And plus, you're the big skinny Pope, man. Come on.
That's right, buddy. You got to remember me next time you come to Dallas.
You got that right. And I got one last thing to tell you. Yes. Great God in heaven, I love you.
Thank you, sir. Everybody check out his new video, Spirit of Chicago.
Right on. Thanks, Kenny.
Have a good one, brother. Take care.
You too, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.